Who should actually get the Blizzard Lighting Psych-Out RGBW LED strobe? Who can safely walk away? And does the price make sense for a regular buyer? Those are the three questions that keep most people up at night when they're scrolling through endless lighting options. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. I've spent a few evenings setting up a modest home DJ rig, talked to a couple of club techs, and read through the handful of reviews that are out there. So let me walk you through what I found before you decide whether to click Add to Cart. First off, the biggest source of hesitation for most buyers is the promise of a full RGBW light with dual-zone DMX control and the fear that it might be a gimmick that looks great on paper but falls short when you actually need it to pulse, flash, or blend colors in a live environment. The Blizzard Psych-Out isn't a moving head. It doesn't have built-in patterns, and it relies on an external DMX console or controller to unlock its potential. That means you have to be comfortable with at least a basic DMX setup or be willing to learn. If you're the type who buys a light, plugs it in, and expects it to start a light show on its own, this is probably not the best fit. On the other hand, if you already have a small DMX rig for a club, a church stage, or a home party setup, the extra flexibility of controlling the top and bottom have separately can actually give you more creative options than a single-zone fixture. The first thing I wanted to test was how the Rgbw white channel affects color mixing. A lot of budget RGB fixtures just crank up the 3 colors and call it a day, which can leave the hues looking a bit washed out or overly saturated. With the Blizzard Psych-Out, you have a dedicated white LED bank, so you can keep the reds, greens, and blues at lower intensity while pulling in pure white to brighten the whole scene without altering the hue. In a small club I set up, I used the top zone for a deep blue wash while the bottom zone mixed in a warm white to keep the dance floor from looking like a frozen lake. The result was a smooth gradient that felt more natural than the flat, neon-only look you often get from pure RGB units. That's a practical strength you won't notice until you actually try it in a real room. The other strong point is the dual-zone DMX control. You can treat the top half and bottom half as independent fixtures, which opens up possibilities like a quick strobe fade effect where the bottom half flashes on a tight beat while the top half holds a steady color. For a wedding DJ, that can be the difference between a boring background light and a dynamic backdrop that reacts to the music. The strobe duration and rate controls are also granular enough that you can fine-tune the speed to match anything from a fast techno track to a slower R&B groove. In practice, I found the strobe to be crisp but not blinding, which is a sweet spot for venues where you don't want to risk someone getting a headache after an hour of dancing. Now, the trade-offs. The Psych-Out uses 3 watt LEDs, and while 256 of them sounds like a lot on paper, the total output isn't on the level of a 1,000 watt moving head or a high-power wash. In a small to medium room, say, a 500 square foot basement, or a 100-person lounge, it's plenty bright. But if you plan to project the light across a large hall or outdoor stage, you'll notice the wash start to fade toward the edges. That's not a defect. It's just a limitation of the class of LED. If you need a light that can dominate a big space, you'll probably have to look at a higher wattage fixture. Another practical weakness is the reliance on external DMX hardware. The unit itself doesn't have any built-in programs or a simple tap-to-earn mode. You need a console or a software app that can send DMX signals, which adds to the upfront cost and setup time. For people who are just starting out and only own a basic controller with a few channels, you might end up allocating most of your channel budget just to address this one light. Also, the product's documentation is fairly sparse. I had to piece together the addressing scheme from a short PDF, which could be a hurdle for anyone not comfortable digging through tech manuals. Looking at the overall rating, 4.3 out of 5 stars from 69 reviewers, it seems the community is generally happy, but the limited number of reviews means you're not getting a massive sample size to weigh against your own needs. The positive vibe comes from users who appreciate the color fidelity and the dual-zone flexibility, while the few critical notes usually revolve around the brightness ceiling and the lack of built-in effects. In other words, the product delivers exactly what it promises: a solid, controllable,